Welcome to the Germinate podcast, where agriculture, business, and innovation take root and thrive. I'm Joe Sampson, and with nearly 2 decades of experience in agricultural equipment and scaling businesses, I'm here to bring you actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategic advice. Whether you're an industry veteran or just starting out, this podcast is your guide to cultivating ideas, expanding your knowledge, and growing your venture. So let's get started and germinate your path to success. All right, folks, welcome back to the Germinate podcast. I'm your host, Joe Sampson. Thanks for taking this ride for us again. And today we got ourselves a real special guest, a longtime buddy of mine, Matt Perrault. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, so this is going to be a good one, folks. So How you doing, Matt?
Doing good. Been staying busy.
Cold out there, eh?
Looks like we got a little warm up on the horizon, so that'll be good.
I stopped looking at the weather because I was like, forget this, man. I can't handle it anymore. I need to move to somewhere sunny. This is getting crazy.
It'll be in the 50s next week. It'll feel like 80 around here.
Yeah, let's bust out. We're Midwesterners, so Matt lives in Illinois, I live in Iowa, so we're used to negative energy or weather. But the 50s come out, dude. We're going to be in our swim trunks and busting out the swimming pool in the driveway.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get rolling here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are. This is really the first podcast. In fact, I know it is the first one I've done where we've got ourselves an actual real life farmer here, everybody. So we're going to learn a lot today. So talk to us about yourself and your background.
Hopefully learn something anyway. So as Joe said, I'm Matt Perrault from kind of Northeast Illinois here. Until recently, I had worked at Shoup Manufacturing from the time I was 15 years old until present day. So let's call it 20 years. While there, I'd done everything from building boxes all the way through the production department. I did internships in high school and college, sales, purchasing. And then after I graduated from the University of Illinois, ultimately, I was in research and development, which is where I spent the majority of my career there. My primary role in doing research and development was reverse engineering and designing ag replacement parts that span across the ag sector. If you've never seen a Shoup catalog before, there's everything in there. We're talking corn planter parts, grain drill parts, tillage equipment, hay equipment, sprayers, you name it, any make and brand is in there. So being part of a company that had such a vast array of parts, you were forced to learn something every single day. And growth was just a part of what you did. I always made the joke. I said, if I'm at work and I haven't learned something new by 9 a.m., somebody swing by my office and wake me up because I'm.
Oh, dude, I love that. I love that. That's been really the story of my entire little journey here the last 3 weeks is building some momentum every day. I don't care if it's a 0.5%, just something to kind of gain some ground.
Exactly. It makes it nice to be able to know that you're going to go into a situation. You're going to have to learn something new to figure out how to get out of it.
Tell us a little bit about, this isn't going to be the Shoup podcast by any stretch because you're no longer with them and you kind of chose to go down a different path. We'll talk about that. But for those that don't know, Shoup is what, and Shoup is who. You mentioned they have a catalog. Shoup is an aftermarket parts. We've always talked about them as like the Amazon of farm parts. Is that an accurate description?
I would say so. Yes. Mostly consumable type items that are going to be replaced on machinery. Service intervals of let's call it 1 to 5 years would be where they're at. So if you're not at all familiar with the ag sector, think of like windshield wipers, brakes, tires on your car that would get replaced multiple times throughout the life of the car, not necessarily the driver door in case a deer runs into you.
Yeah. And so part of the lifeblood of a company like that is coming up with something something new, something replaceable all the time. I mean, that's the only way a company like that grows is if they continue to add parts to their catalog to continue to provide the customer with the best experience possible and keep coming back. I'm guessing a lot of the customers at Shoup are repeatable guys or gals.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure, for sure. So
So you worked there basically since you were in high. I mean, it sounds like what, high school, middle school, 15, you said?
I was 15 years old. My mom dropped me off the first summer I worked there.
Wow.
So yeah, it was actually kind of odd. Going to a place like that. Obviously, they have regulations and rules, and I couldn't technically use power tools until I was 18 years old, and so it
Nice.
was weird being a farm kid that's used an impact wrench from the time I could carry the damn thing to go, I got to a place and they're like, yeah, you're gonna just have to bag hardware and build boxes with no like
Right.
machinery or tools because
Right.
we can't have you assembling things because you're not old enough yet.
So everybody knows the shoot part of your life now, but the sort of main part of your life is, dude,
the
you're a farmer, man.
the
You
farmer,
farm some ground.
and that's why I am where I am today. A big part of why I'm not at Shoup anymore is I'm in the process of taking over our four generation family farm operation that's here. We grow corn, soybeans, and wheat. I farm with my dad, and it's time you can't. I appreciate every day I get to go work with my dad on the family farm operation, and it's been a heck of a lot of fun just being able to be around more and have more time working with him even in the off season. We obviously put in a ton of hours together in the spring and fall, but yeah, really looking forward to this phase.
Yeah, I mean, your story is not alone, man. There's a lot of generational farms out there still that are kind of in a place where there's going to have to be a transition or a succession plan. And if you don't have one planned out, you might want to listen to this podcast and try to figure out, how to do it and where to go. So, 4 generations is a long time. That's a lot of pride, but it's also a lot of experience. You worked at Shoup since 15, but you probably been working on that farm since you were able to walk, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've got a 4.5-year-old now, and he'll be able to say the same thing. He's over there helping us all the time pick up nuts and bolts and wrenches. So, yes, since I was able to walk, I've been around there.
So you got this background of, what it's like to be on a farm. You put the boots on, you're in the tractor, you're pulling tillage, you're pulling a planter, you're combining. Yet you've also had this experience at an aftermarket agricultural, sort of, I want to call it supply distribution center.
Yeah.
Uh, Combining those two things, man, that's valuable experience that a very small percentage of the world has. So, yeah, I mean, let's talk about a little bit of that about, where does your R&D come into play? What do you see today versus what was on the farm maybe 10 years, 15, 20 years ago when you started?
Yeah. And the one thing, I guess I'll preface with this, the one thing that really helps actually using the parts before
Yeah.
you design them is you have an extreme appreciation and understanding for what goes into that part and what it's actually doing out in the field outside of just looking at it in a CAD software. It's actually using it makes it a lot different.
Yeah. So when you're developing a part, I'm assuming one of the most primary things to do is to, like you said, actually put it on something, probably put it on something that you own and say, I'm going to try this thing out and I'm going to be the first critic of this.
Yep. I'm
Yeah.
going to be the first one to hopefully not break it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you feel like it passes your test, well, okay, now we can unveil this product to the rest of the world and let them go from there.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
I
Yeah.
gotcha. I gotcha.
Yep.
So
So
talk about a little bit about, what's the industry looking like now? What do you think will be kind of the new phase in R&D? I always say if companies aren't doing R&D, then you're real close to closing up shop. You might as well forget about it because if you're not growing, you're dying, right?
for sure. No, I mean, high speed planners became a part of the picture I guess it's already been almost a decade now. It's crazy to think that.
Yeah.
So everybody's been trying to figure out a way to uh, make the planter row unit take the abuse at higher speeds. Put this in perspective. You're driving a car, and most of the time the speed limit's 65 to 70 mile an hour on the interstate.
Yeah.
Imagine if all of a sudden in a couple of years they said, oh, you can actually run 140 miles an hour if you'd like to. When you hit that pothole at 140 miles an hour, it's going to shove the front wheel of the car right through the fender.
Yeah.
Take that back to planters. We went from two decades ago, I would have challenged you to find somebody that planted corn at over 5 to 6 miles an hour. Now, most manufacturers with high-speed planters are saying 10 to 12, no problem.
Yeah.
So we've doubled the speed of that. And there have been a lot of companies that have put a ton of focus on wear parts that can help extend the life, Perreault arms, gauge wheel arms, things like that can help make them last and stand that testament a little bit. But there's a lot of ground engaging parts on a planter that have still, they haven't changed a lot in the last couple decades. So I think there's going to have to be, I think that the company or someone is going to eventually put together a planter row unit that is cost effective, but can really stand up to the test of time from the factory.
Yeah.
And maybe not have to put a whole bunch of add-ons onto it in order to make it last.
Yes.
There's a lot of OEMs that are doing some of that stuff in little phases, but it'll be interesting to see what that looks like down the road. I think another big thing that's happening right now is, and I've mentioned this to you in years past, I think conservation and strip tillage is going to be a big thing. We're getting incentivized from major companies. The big talk is reducing your carbon footprint. And the way these companies do that is by offering for farmers to plant cover crops and for farmers to reduce tillage practices that grow the crops that the companies ultimately process. And that's how they offset their carbon footprint. So I think strip tillage, as you can see, there's a lot of major OEMs that are dipping their toe into that market, not just short line companies anymore. I think that's going to be a big part of things moving forward.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of rewind a little bit, the importance of a high-speed planter, put your farmer cap on now. I mean, obviously it's pretty obvious on why a high-speed planter is such an advantage on a farm field, but is it more than just about the time it takes? I mean, talk about kind of the germination windows and the hybrids now that are getting planted in these fields. I mean, it's more than just planting a farm or planting a field fast.
Correct. I mean, the best thing you can do as a farmer is make sure that every last kernel of corn pops out of the ground at the same exact time.
Yep.
If you can make sure that every kernel of corn comes up in a 24-hour window, you set yourself up for a much more successful year than if you didn't. So a lot of that has to go into ground temperature, ground conditions, and then obviously making sure that you've got a planter that can put the seed in a spot where it's going to emerge at the same time all of the rest of the seeds are in the field. So that high-speed planter is going to have technology on it that consistently puts that seed there, and it's going to allow you to do that across a large number of acres in a time frame that is much shorter, because we're shooting for that ideal soil temperature and ideal soil moisture, not just getting the kernel in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. There's mapping, there's things that you can do these days that are just technology. If you're not using it, obviously you got to take advantage of it for those very things that you're talking about. But there's technology now that says, this is the optimal time to plant down to pardon my ignorance here, but down to the what? Week, day, hour, minute? Where are we at?
Oh, I mean, the data's out there. Yeah. I mean, and again, it all goes off, every year's different. It all goes off of soil temp and moisture. Yep. I mean, that is the big thing. If we can, most of the time in our area, we're just south of Lake Michigan. So we'll get northerly winds that'll keep us a little bit colder than what it would even 20, 30 miles south of where we're at. But most of the time we're planting last week of April right on through the first week of May would be the sweet spot around here. But if it was March 15th and you said, Matt, there is no chance there's going to be a frost, no chance of cool weather, we'd plant in the middle of March, and that's what a lot of people do mid-state. They start at the end of March, and it all comes down to soil temperature and moisture.
Yeah, you get those 55, 60-degree days like you were talking about early on. I mean, it gets these guys start getting itchy and saying, okay, maybe
Yeah.
now's the time, and taking soil temps, and away they go. Yeah, super interesting.
But for most of us, like I said, we've got to wait. We've got to wait later to make sure that we're not going to have temperature snap back the other way. So
Yeah.
what that means is when the time comes, let's get it in fast. Every day counts.
Yeah. It's funny. In my previous role, I would go, I traveled all over the world, but I'm trying to think where I first saw strip tillage to go onto that, but it had to have been in Europe somewhere. And, strip till's been around for a long time, but not
Yeah.
really around all that popular in the States. I mean, there were some times when people did it, but you're right, man. The last, I'm going to say maybe year or two, right? Maybe during the end or towards the end of COVID, started seeing strip tillage units pop up left and right. And the interesting thing about strip tillage is it's not a planter, but it is sort of similar to that of a row unit. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of parts going into the ground, and each one of them's doing kind of a separate little unique thing to the soil. Have you guys practiced strip till on your ground yet, or is it
Yes.
you
Yeah,
have?
we
Okay,
do.
okay.
Yep. We're probably about a third of our corn acres now. Maybe even a little stronger than that. Yeah, it's probably closer to half. Half of our corn acres are strip till. Um,
So talk a little bit about strip till and why you think it's gaining popularity, and why you think those legs are going to stick around for a while in the future.
well, I mean, if you go back 15, 20 years, everybody used to just wait and spread fertilizer in the middle of the winter when the ground's frozen. They'd go out there and fling fertilizer out there, and their nutrients are out there waiting for the snow to melt.
Yeah,
Snow starts melting, and imagine us getting the ground still being frozen like a rock, and we get an inch of rain.
right,
Where did your nutrients end up? I don't know. Wherever the water took it.
right.
So the continued push with conservationists has been, let's try and either put those nutrients out there in the fall and figure out a way to incorporate them, or at least make sure they get incorporated by moisture before it freezes, or wait until the spring when things thaw out. And as we've discussed, sometimes the issue in the spring of the year is we only get so many days to work in the field before we're ready to plant. So there's nothing worse than starting out the season with a wet field, bad ground conditions, and having to have a co-op or yourself go out and run across it with a floater and a big fertilizer spreader and pack the heck out of the ground while it's still too wet. And then you're setting yourself up for issues all year long. So
Right.
with a strip till application, a lot of times like us, we're going out in the fall of the year after we harvest beans. So late September, early October, we're going out there and we're banding that. We're putting those nutrients right down there about 4 to 6 inches deep. And all of that fertilizer is sitting right there, and it's not going anywhere. It can rain, it can freeze, it can do whatever it wants. That fertilizer is in the soil, it's not moving. And then next year when we come in, we're going to plant right on top of that strip. And the first thing those corn roots do is they start going down, and guess what they start running into? All the nutrients we place there.
Hmm.
They don't have to wait and grow out towards the middle of the road to start finding some of those. So we're able to sometimes you're able to reduce fertilizer rates. You're able to drop that back, which is, you know, you have to know what you can and can't do. Otherwise, you're going to start sacrificing yield. But with it being concentrated right there, we can do that. So with expensive input prices where they're at, that gives us an opportunity. And then we're not running across the field as many times. We're not chiseling in the fall of the year, field cultivating in the spring, and then planting.
Yeah. Yeah. Practices have definitely changed. And, obviously we're kind of in a new era of farming too. And call it middle 2024, start here of 2025. I was at the Louisville Farm Show last week, I guess it was, as we're recording this. And, there's a lot of talk on what the market's going to do. What's the agricultural industry going to do with commodity prices, with high inventory levels. These are the things I've talked about on this podcast now for everybody's probably getting bored of these things that you can't really control. But
Sure.
what are some of the trends that you look at specifically? You're a trend guy. I told you guys, by the way, this dude is intelligent. So we're getting some goodies here. But what are some of the trends and things that you're tracking out there to kind of forecast your year, your spring, your fall? What are some go-to tips that everybody can kind of look at, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, right now, as much as I am not a person that likes to talk or follow politics much. There's
Right.
obviously a lot of things hinging on what the tariff situation is. You know, fortunately, we've had a little bit of bounce back in commodity prices in the last couple of months. Last fall, everything was about as low as it'd been in a long time. Um, but what everybody's finding out is we harvested grain that was at extremely low moisture levels. So a lot of the corn we took out of the field at 12% instead of 15%. Soybeans came out at 8.5 to 9 instead of 13. So when your end users go to actually process that, it doesn't go as far. So they need more product basically to get the same thing out of it in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
So the USDA and they've all reduced actually what our yield was last fall, which is what's driven up prices a little bit. So I think our prices are going to be relatively stable. We're watching South America, seeing what their harvest looks like, seeing what their second corn crop, the safrinha crop, what their planting looks like. They've got some hot and dry weather right now. So it'll be interesting. That's a lot of what we have to pay attention to. A lot of our inputs are already locked in for 2024. Actually, the majority of them are. We've got chemical fertilizer already purchased, seeds already purchased.
Is that
So yeah,
you? Is that you and your operation, or is that pretty common in general?
I would say at this point, the majority of farm operations across the country are going to have a lot of their 2025 inputs
Already
locked
picked
in.
up. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Grain marketing wise, who knows where people are at? You know, if guys have a lot of on-farm storage, they might still be in a position where they've got a lot of their grain held back and they're selling at these slightly elevated prices. For guys that don't have a lot of on-farm storage, there's a chance that they delivered a lot of it out of the field last fall and didn't want to pay to store it because they didn't see a lot of upside potential at the time. So they might have sold it, upper $3 corn.
Yeah.
So there's some people that are pretty nervous, and rightfully so. I mean, it's and one conversation I had with somebody the other day, they were like, yeah, input prices are still, crazy high. And yes and no. I track fertilizer prices and nitrogen prices. We watch that, chemical prices, and we're actually back down quite a ways more towards a normal level on that. But what's continued to remain high for farmers, equipment prices, and then all of your living expenses, which anyone listening to this would relate to.
Right.
Health insurance. Go to a grocery store. It's twice what it was a handful of years ago. So at the end of the day, a farmer still has to provide for a family, and they have to take off of a farm on a per acre basis to account for that. And a lot of that's what's elevated, and that's not going to go away. It's not coming back down, regardless of commodity prices.
It's crazy, man. I don't think it seems like I'm not a farmer, for those out there listening, but it seems like we always think, it's almost weird. Like, yeah, you forget about that side of a farm operation. You're right. It's your livelihood. You're taking care
Yeah.
of a family. You're taking care of your kids, they're everything that our kids are into these days, which doesn't seem to get any less expensive, whether it be sports or any other activities. And we forget about that side of a farmer, man. It's not easy for anybody, but it's certainly not easy when those things happen to you guys, because then it's just a matter of, there's only so much you can do. You've got your acreage, you've got to make it work. And so therefore you've got to study the numbers and make sure, hey, I'm doing everything on this farm that optimizes my profitability.
Exactly. And the only way we can do that is by growing more bushels on a per acre basis. Because I can't, within reason, I can't necessarily control where I get to sell my corn at. Yes, I can I can not sell it in the fall of the year for the $3.75, and I can try and store it and hope that it goes to $4.50 or even higher than that. But I can't control the markets. So if they don't ever get up to that level, I'm going to have to sell it so that way I can stay solvent and cash flow my next year.
Yeah, I mean, the last I checked, that's basically the only way you can make money, right? I know how you guys can
It's
spend a lot of money, but the only way to make it is I got a product and here it is.
and I
Somebody
got to
needs to
sell
pay
it.
me for it. Yep.
Yep, exactly.
It reminded me of this. I was talking to a farmer, a guy. Now, in fact, I think I'm going to have him on the podcast here later on. He'll be the second farmer, by the way, but they've got a lot of nice new equipment. And I want your take on this, but their operations, they like buying new tractors and new planters because they're under warranty.
Yep.
And he was telling me a blown engine on a tractor is about $150,000. So when that sucker's not in warranty, that's a huge expense that all of a sudden now your kids might have to take the baseball season off because guess what? Dad had to throw $150,000 for a new motor. If you don't have a motor in your tractor, well, you're not going to be able to have that product to sell at the end of the year. And so it's kind of killing their operations to not be able to trade off their equipment that's getting a little bit older because
Yep.
these dealers aren't taking trades right now because they got too much inventory. So it's
Correct.
killing them. They want to buy, they want to get new, but they can't because there's just we're stuck in almost like a peanut butter. We're stuck in sludge. We can't get the market to move. And is that something that you guys see? Does that make sense? Or is that, I mean, everybody's got different operations, but
Correct. Yeah, I would say you're spot on with a lot of the farmers that do typically roll machinery, even in this area. They're kind of being told by dealerships, okay, we used to roll every year. Why don't you keep this one for 2 or 3 years because I don't have a lot of outlets.
yeah.
And that's one thing I do monitor relatively close to is overall machinery prices. Because they've kind of stabilized, but man, there are some deals to be had as compared to what there was. And this is on the used machinery side, as to what there was, 2-3 years ago. To bring us back, our farm operation, most of our machinery is right around 2009 to 2011, and we've it's the reason we've done that, right, wrong, or indifferent. We don't have to deal with any DEF systems on any of the tractors or combines. For a while, those are getting much more reliable, but for a while it seemed like you never really knew what was going to happen with that and when it was going to cause issues. So we just kind of pumped the brakes on things. And we've always been the kinds of guys that don't mind wrenching and fixing things in the winter. I've got a planter tore apart right now. I'm doing a pretty good size rebuild on. We typically get about 2 to 3 years out of a rebuild on our planter, and then it's a matter of tearing it apart in the shop and putting it back together. It takes a few days, but
Nice.
not a big deal. So,
Yeah. Well, you guys can clearly see the knowledge that Matt has on specifically farming and his operations. And I guess it just so happens that our paths sort of aligned here a couple of weeks ago, really. I kind of pulled a move and jumped off the ledge and started my own consulting business. And you sort of did the exact same thing. I mean, I don't want to say you've got a consulting business, but we have formed, I don't know, let's call it the Bald Bearded Guy Alliance. We've always been brothers from another mother, right? But
That's
I remember
right.
the first time I met you, I'm like, oh, I'm going to like this guy. I
Oh
know it
yeah.
right now. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, we, our stars align. So our experiences, with what our backgrounds are sort of mesh up, and we're still kind of figuring out how you and I can partner here, but we know one thing: we definitely want to partner and collaborate with one another.
Yeah.
um, how do you think customers out there, small mid-sized manufacturers, they're looking to not have the CEO do all the work, because that's just what they're used to. They might not have the operational capacity. They might not know how to get and gain product market and new parts because they don't have the experience that say maybe you have that hey, I've actually ran this on the farm. I know this product works and I know it can sell. Talk about how you and I collaborating can kind of help the market out. And you know, we're in the early phases here, my friend. We're still trying to figure it out, but talk about it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. No, one thing with my experience, it's I've on the farm operation, obviously with row crop production equipment, I've got on hands-on experience there. But through my background up at Shoup, I mean, any make, model, brand machinery and what its popularity is, what its life cycle is, I've got a pretty good pulse on that, and I know how to gauge. I have a pretty good feeling on how to gauge the industry and where that's at in a demand curve.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
I
think,
think for a company that is maybe not in the ag space and is looking to figure out how to get into the ag space from a manufacturing perspective, I, I think we can help work together and formulate a plan to help point them in the right direction on things that they might need to look at versus things that aren't going to matter as much.
yeah. And you're definitely a forward thinker. You're always looking for the next trend, the next new thing, the next. I mean, you talked about high speed planning and strip tillage and how important those and how critical that is to a farm. But you know, you were always on the cutting edge of the next new thing, and that's why you and I have talked. I mean, we had conversations just like this for the last 15 years. You know,
Yes,
I
for
would
sure.
call you out of the blue and just listen to you
Yep.
and say, okay, what do we need to do next to create something that is going to take us to the future of agriculture? So that's something that you've always had the forward mindset on. I don't know where that came from, man, but that's just how you operate, right?
Yeah. No, I do I do follow and read a fair amount of those types of things. I'm not a big book reader, but when it comes to actually following different ag sectors, ag trends, marketing guys, I do tend to stay on top of that. So,
Nice.
but
Well, you got a lot of knowledge in there, and you got a lot of things going on right now. It's stressful, man. Those things can be stressful. I've been doing this the last couple times. Tell everybody how Matt unwinds and how you kind of get through a day of fixing a planner or having a meeting with me or having a meeting with one of our potential customers. What's a good unwind session look like for you?
well, I've got a 2.5 and a 4.5 year old at home.
Oh, dude.
So usually when I get home, I don't know that it's more like we're getting more wound up some days, I
Yep.
think.
Yep.
But no, I tell you what, and that's one thing I've always, even being in the corporate world, I've always just enjoyed being able to go back to the family farm operation and do work around there. And that's it doesn't get me very wound up. Like it's just it's kind of it's peaceful. You're just doing your own thing, and you know you're doing something that's helping yourself and your family farm operation. So yeah, I don't I'm into hunting, fishing, boating, that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I just staying busy with the family life
Yeah.
and farming. So
Well, it's funny you say that. It's so true. Like when you come back to the family farm, you can kind of just feel that sense of, oh, it's almost inspiring. You feel that sense of pride and that sense of, you know, hey, I'm with my family and I'm doing something for the betterment of this fourth generation farm, which is an exact collaboration over to any one of these businesses or customers that I know you and I will team up with one day to be able to help, to be able to truly help and not just do it because, oh, we want all the credit or all this. We you know, you know what it's like to struggle, and you also know what it's like to overcome those struggles and feel that sense of pride that, hey, we did this, we worked
yep.
this out, it worked. And you know, I love that, man. That's go ahead.
That was actually one of the notes I had made. I think you had said something about things I had learned over the course of years and never take no for an answer. Like I feel like a few of the more fun and better projects I had ever worked on in my career, I got told no a lot of times, like, or
Yeah.
no quoted, or, this isn't going to work this way, or we can't make it this way for this reason. Keep looking. Like, And that's one thing I feel like you and I have a ton of connections in the industry, and there's always someone out there. You just have to find that right person that's willing to say, all right, here's what we maybe need to do to tweak this just a little bit, but we can make this work.
Yeah.
Whether it's a price point thing or whether it's a design thing, I don't know. I think you and I have a lot of resources that we bring to the table that could help different companies in different ways.
Yeah. And check out my website. I'm going to do some features on Matt here as well, everybody. So embosales.com, check that out, and we'll put together some things. We're just so early in this game, but I think you and I both understand the vision and the path forward here. That light at the end of that tunnel is so bright. Like, we both see it. I know we do. I can tell just from our conversations here the last couple of weeks. We get it. We see it. Now it's just kind of unveiling that to everybody else. It's almost like the future of business. It's 2025. You don't have to do the same things you did 5 years or so ago. It's all about taking care of your customers. I say this all the time. It's repeatable, but take care of them, take care of your people, and then align yourself with good people, with good hearts. And that's definitely you, man. You're one of those guys for sure.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it, Joe.
Well, as we wrap up here, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man. It's probably long overdue, but I definitely appreciate it. You're going to have to come back because I could have gone on for frickin' hours here. But
yeah, no, there was a fair amount of notes we didn't get to, but no, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here and talk with you. Like I said, I think conversations will continue to evolve with us as time goes on, and who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, I see you being a regular guest on this show because your knowledge you can't wrap it up in a 35 minutes or 36 minutes. One of these days I might do a Rogan-like podcast where it's like 3 hours, but I don't know.
Man.
We're going to have some whiskey or something.
I was going to say, are we each going to have a bottle of bourbon by us too? By the end of it, it'll be real fun.
Yeah, exactly. But no, how does everybody get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out to you if you want to give that information out?
Right now you can reach me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I don't know if you put a link on here for that, Joe.
I will. I'll make sure to put something out there for you. Yeah. When this thing comes out, I'll definitely link you up.
Yep. No. And otherwise, yeah, I'm still working on getting an email set aside for the consulting side of things. So, I'll get that to you if that's all right. As opposed to blowing up the personal email inbox.
Dude, just give your cell phone number away. Come on.
Well, I should just do that. Yeah. So, no, for sure, I'll get that information over to you, and like I said, maybe in future videos we'll have all that set up. So, still pretty fresh.
All right. How often we shaving the head these days?
I'm like an every 2 to 3 days kind of guy.
Okay.
Are you like a straight razor guy, or you got one of those electric ones?
Everybody's telling me to get one of those electric ones, but no, I've just been a straight razor guy for I don't know how, way too many years. But yeah,
I've got the electric one. I switched to it a year ago. Do it. Don't go back.
Is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there you go. A firm believer.
That's probably the best piece of information someone might take away from this podcast.
Maybe they'll sponsor it someday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much for coming on. And till next time, my friend.
Anytime. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the Germinate podcast. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others in the industry. And join me next time as we continue to explore the innovations and strategies shaping the future of agriculture and business. Until then, keep growing, keep innovating, and keep germinating your success.